All right, so picking up where we left off, let's go ahead and finish styling these links, at least for right now. So, and if you look up here, that's what these list items are, and they've got each one of them has an anchor tag inside of it. So um, there are two different things that you could look at. One is you could look at styling the list items, but the problem with styling a list item is that it's not actually a link. And so you'll notice, for instance, this entire block is a list item, right? But whenever I hover over it, you see it doesn't turn into a clickable link. I want the entire line to be clickable. See the way that it is here when I put my little cursor over. In fact, let me zoom in. When I put my cursor over, you see how that turns into a little hand symbol so that we know that it's a link. Well, to do that, I actually have to style this anchor tag because the anchor is the only thing that prompts the actual link behavior. So what I can do is if I tell the anchor to be a display type of block, because remember right now it's just inline. So we'll say display block, all right? And then if we come over here, you see now it takes up the block because it's not acting like it's inline anymore. And if I want to be really explicit, I can also tell it to be a width of 100%. All right, and then I definitely will know that it takes up the right amount of space. The other thing that I can do is, let's just go ahead and create a hover state. So I'll say global nav ul li a. I'm going to copy that, and then I'll come down here and I'll paste that and do :hover at the end. All right, and then I'm going to say that it's going to change the background color. And let's just do, there's a color that's actually called Dodger Blue. All right, so I'm going to type Dodger Blue, and now if I come over here, you'll see that I get that hover state. And I'm going to get rid of this body background now, and instead of this sort of teal color, we don't need that anymore. Let's just come up here, and I'm just going to remove that completely. All right, and then now we've got it back to the way it was. Okay, so now we've got all of these things behaving on hover, which is nice. And if you wanted to add a little bit more decoration to that, you could. You don't have to, but you could. So if I come in here and let's come back down to that anchor tag, and if we do a little bit more decoration, like maybe let's give it a border, and I'm going to put it on the base rule. Okay, so we'll say border. And actually, let's not do, yeah, let's do a border. We'll do a border all the way around, and let's make it like 2 pixels, and we'll do solid. And if I give it a color, let's just say that I give it a color of red, right? Then what you're going to see over here, let me click off of it somewhere, you'll see that I get this red border. And I don't necessarily like the way that that looks, but it's, you know, it's showing me what that border is actually doing and how much space it's taking up, right? So what I could do is maybe on the normal state, maybe I just want it to be black, right? Because I don't want to see all of these borders on top of each other, because see how they double up in spots? I don't like the way that that looks. So instead of red, I'm going to make it 0, or actually let's not black, because the background of this was 222. So I'm going to make the background match the border color. All right, and so let's just click away from there somewhere. And then now you see when I hover, I'm not getting a border because I haven't defined a border color on hover, but right now what you do see is that the border is black, so or that 222 color. Now what I can do on hover is I can actually change the border, and I don't know for sure if I want the entire border to change. Let's say that I want it to be the same. I don't want it to change in pixels because then it would jump. And that's kind of why just so you have an understanding, that's why on the regular hover, that's why I have a border already set up, because if I had 0 border on the normal state and then I went into the hover state and added a border, it would jump and it would make everything else sort of bump up and down a little bit, and it gets a little bit weird sometimes. So maybe let's do, I'm going to right click and say quick edit, and let's find a color that I think might go nicely with that. Maybe somewhere in, I don't know, somewhere in this green ballpark, maybe a yellower green or something. I don't know. Let's just try that and see what that might look like. So now when I hover, you see I get I get the blue background, but I also get this green outline, which I think I might be fine with. I might like that. And you might not like the border on the left and the right. So if you wanted to do something where it was just top and bottom, not left and right, then you could do specific rules on hover that were border top and border bottom with these values, but I'm just going to leave it at border. Okay. All right. So I've got something that looks kind of like that. All right. And that's good so far. And this is all working. Now, the thing that I want to be sure of, and you might like to have something visually change on hover, that's fine with the logo or with the menu. I think I'm just going to leave it the way it is. But the thing that we need to do is we need to make it so that this is collapsed, right? And then these will only show up when we go to hover it, okay? And if we wanted to make it so that it showed up on click instead of hover, then you have to use JavaScript. Right now, there's nothing that really works to make something on click unless you do something strange like with a button. Yeah, anyway, we're going to stick with CSS for right now. I'm going to show you how to make this purely in CSS. And that means it's going to be based on hover state. So the next thing then that you would need to do is you need to control the height or the size of this global nav, right? Because that's the main container right here. If you'll notice right here, we don't have a height on it, but if you think about the tallest thing that's in there that we'd want to show is that logo. So if we look at the logo and come down here, the logo is going to be inside the home button, and you see that the home button is 50%, but the actual home image we set to be 4M. And plus we also gave it a margin. So if we say that it's 4M, if that picture was square, and I believe that it was, and if you wanted to go back and double check, we could do that. And I'm going to jump over here, and while I am inside of my browser, I'm going to right click that logo and I'm going to inspect it. And here's how you can figure this out in Chrome. It's a really handy little thing. So if I hover over the image, down here, it should show you, it depends on where you've got it scrolled, but in the CSS area, it's got two sides. It's got the CSS rules, and then over here it's got this little diagram that shows you the box model. So anything that's in blue right here that I'm hovering over is the actual element. Then it shows you in padding, and then if I were to hover over the border, it would show you that, then it shows you the margin and so on. So right now, if I look at the actual element, you can see that the actual element is not quite square, but almost. It's 64 pixels by 61.156. So it's almost perfectly square. And because we don't have this picture set to scale, because it's not getting bigger as we get the page size bigger, then we know that this height is going to basically be the same as long as we don't monkey around with that too much. And so that height is, you can see it's 61.156, all right, pixels. That's essentially the height. And then we've also got this margin for the height. We have this margin right here that is for top and bottom is that's for the menu. Let's look at, okay, for the margin here, it's 0.75. So for top, 0.75 plus bottom, 0.75 ends up being 1.5, right? So 1.5 M plus, and then I said over here 61 point whatever pixels. So if we wanted to set the height to match that height, right, then what we can do here is we can say height, and we're going to say, now I can do this one of two ways. I could just estimate with my M's, right? That's one way I could do it. So, or, right, because if you look down here, that's 4M, and it's roughly square. So we could say 4M plus 1.5 for its margins. We could come up here then, and we could say 5.5M. That's one way of doing it. And I'm going to close that. And then you see now it cuts off the menus that are down below it. All right, so that's one way that you could do it really simply. If you wanted to be super precise, Super, super precise. There is another way you can do it, and I've mentioned this before, and it's really handy. You can use the calculation value tool. So you say calc, and then in parentheses, you would put, let's say 61.1 pixels, and then you put a space, a plus symbol, a space, and then you would say 1.5 em for those margins, all right? And then it gives you something that's just a little bit more precise, all right? And so and now you're like, wait a second, I can't get to my menu anymore. I can't get to those links. Okay, that's not a problem. We're going to fix that. All right, so you can either stick with this, which I'm going to stick with for now. And if you wanted to be really precise, then you could be. If let's see if it makes a difference. It may not make a difference. Let's go to inspect again, and it was 156. So if we wanted to be really precise, we could say 61.156, right? Or you could even say 0.2 if you wanted to round up, okay? Let's just go back over here and close that. I don't know if it actually changed. I wasn't visually paying attention, but it's not going to hurt to be precise. So now if we want it to make it so that when we hover here, that it's going to open up so that the height becomes automatic, right? So that it shows everything that it needs to show. So I'm going to make it so that if you hover anywhere over the global nav, that the height will be fully expanded. And that's fine because that means anywhere that I'm in the global nav, it will definitely show that full menu, and I'm okay with that. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this global nav, so I'm not retyping it. Let's say global nav : hover, all right? And we're going to say for the height, while we're hovering over the global nav, let's just say for right now, it's auto. All right, so if I hover this, you see that it jumps open, and then when I go off of it, it jumps closed, which is kind of cool, right? So it goes open, closed as soon as I'm off of it. All right, and then just so you have an understanding, I want to show you something. If I right click this and go to inspect, in Chrome, right, I've got this little mobile device toggle, and you might be wondering, like on a mobile device, how does it work if you can't hover? Well, on a mobile device, it basically looks at a hover state and it converts that into click on mobile devices. Mobile browsers know to do this. So see, obviously I can't hover. See this little circle? That means it's like my finger. That means I'd have to click and press. That's what I just did, click and press. And then see, I don't get hover states for these links. So that's something else that you need to be aware of, is that any visual cues that you are expecting to provide, you know, clues as to how the navigation should work on hover, those things will not hover, right, on a mobile device. So you'd have to feel confident that somebody would see this list of links and they would know, okay, I need to just click that, right? And whenever they click it, they get the hover state, right? And it would behave. And then if I click off of it, it's like hovering somewhere else. So I just click down here. If I click up here, I click here, that closes. So that's kind of nice without having to use any JavaScript at all. That's a handy feature to know how to do. All right, so that you have an understanding of how hover is converted into a click only for mobile web browsers. Now, if you wanted it to be able to work on click for a non-mobile web browser like this one, like on my computer, then you would have to use JavaScript because CSS doesn't really understand on click. Okay, so I feel like this is a bit jumpy, and so what I would like to do is I would like to put a transition on there. Now let me show you something. All right, so you might say, okay, well, the transition is going to be on the height. And remember, anytime you do a transition, then you need to make sure that it goes on the original normal state of the rule, right? You don't put it on the hover rule, for instance. You put it on the original normal state where you first declared the height or whatever the thing is that you want to transition. So I'm going to say transition. All right, and then we're going to add it to the height. So we're going to say, all right, we're transitioning the height, and then we're going to do it with, let's say, ease, and I'm going to do in/out or a dash out. So it's going to ease in and out, and then I'm also going to do it for 1s for 1 second. Okay, and so now that I've got that, we can come over here and you'll notice that it's still jumping, all right? And the reason it's doing that is because it doesn't understand how to transition from an actual value to auto. That's not going to work. So if we want it to be able to smoothly open and close using CSS, then what we would need to do is figure out how tall it is when it's open. So let's jump over here and let's do that thing again where we right click something. I'll right click one of these link items. And here's the problem with using the inspector right now is that if you notice, I clicked on a link and it's showing it here, but then it's not showing this open. What you need to do if you want to show something in a hover state using the Chrome inspector is you want to go all the way up to the thing that you hover to open it up. And in this case, it's this nav global ID right here where it says nav, and then ignore the data brackets stuff. The data brackets stuff is all about the actual brackets application, just inserting that in there so that you can do the live preview. That's it. Okay. But anyway, so we're looking for nav global, and what you want to come down here to do is while nav global is selected in the HTML in your inspector, you see this down here in the CSS area, there's this colon HOV for hover. If you click that, it'll show these options, and I can click on hover and it will show the hover state as if I'm currently hovering it, but it'll just stay open like that, which is really handy. And so now while I have this nav global open, what I can do is I can look right down here and it shows me exactly how tall that element is. It's showing me that the element is 220 pixels at 0.156. So if I wanted to make it 221 just to be cautious, I could. And now you might think, well, wait, this might change, right? This might change if I were to add padding or something to these links. And the answer to that is yes, that's true. But no matter how I calculate it, whether it's in pixels or not, I would have to change the height of this if I added padding or something to these anyway. So I'm just going to look at this entire height for the entire global nav ID, and I'll come over here and I'm going to change auto to let's say 221 pixels. Okay, like that. Let's just save that and let's do a test. And let's see what happens if I close this and let's do a refresh. And then if I open that up, you'll see now it does work. And in fact, if you look, you'll notice that it's showing a little bit of a black border down at the bottom, and that's that extra, because it was really not 221, it was 220.156. And so we could try to see if we can eliminate that. And let's see if it'll do 220.156. Let's see if that works. And hit refresh just to be careful and certain, and it does in fact follow those decimals in pixels as well. All right, so you can see how that works, right? And now you've got something that opens and closes nicely. And if you wanted to have hover states on these, you could make hover states if you chose to. Like for instance, if you wanted this to turn red or something, you could change this SVG to something that's red or whatever, right? You could also outline it, give it a background color if you wanted. In fact, we could try that really fast if you want to see what this menu would look like. If we take down here, so that's the entire menu. I don't want the entire menu to hover, I just want the image. We could give it a background, let's say background of, let's do that Dodger blue again so that it matches the color of the link hovers. So now let's do a refresh. Oh, that's actually, my apologies, that is not on, let's cut that. That's not on hover, that's on the regular state. We need to actually create a hover state for menu img. So let's say menu space img colon hover, like that. And then let's do the background of Dodger blue, right? And then we come over here and you see that it works whenever it's on hover, which is nice. Okay, and then if you wanted this to show up the same way, you could do something similar. You could also give this, if you wanted this to have, border radius around it, you could, so that the edges are a little bit softer, and you could say border radius let's say 3 pixels. So it's just a really, really soft border radius. Yeah, it's just really, really slight. Okay, so that's that part. Now, the thing that we want to have happen, that works really nicely for a mobile menu, but the thing that I really want to have happen is that whenever I get on a larger screen, that I don't have to constantly go up here. I want it so that the links will just appear. Okay, and so the way that we're going to do that is with a media query, and we're going to do that in the next video.